Alright guys, so as you can look in my face, I've been in my office since about 5:30 this Monday, for two reasons, but the reason it concerns you is because I forgot to do this. So we are going to talk about consumers in sport, and this is going to go along with the research that you're having to do, particularly for your infographics. Um, Course announcements, guys. Remember, October the 2nd is when your um, Adobe Illustrator runs out. So, guys, you got a lot to get done, and I'm starting to worry about some of you individually and groups getting your stuff done. None of you have come to see me. None of you took advantage of the computer that's in the class, and so I'm starting to get a little bit concerned about you guys actually getting what I need you to do. So we'll talk about it again on Tuesday, but just understand it. You got a logo contest, you got your individual logo, you got your infographic, all that stuff that's due. So just know where what has to be done. So we're going to look at a couple of things. We want to understand first what kind of studies do people do in sport, what kind of methods they use to get research, and then what are some of the differences between people who live on college campuses. We really want to focus um, on a lot of college students, college athletics in this. So some things you need to be able to answer when you're starting to deal with consumer research is what are the demographics and psychographics of your primary customers. Demographics, obviously, race, gender, how much money they make, type stuff. Psychographics are more like spending preferences. Okay, what do they like to do for entertainment? You need to know where they live. You need to know, have they been exposed to your product and how did it happen? They see it on TV, but they see it in person. Um, why did they choose to even consume your product? And then how and why would somebody become a loyal user of your product? So all those are important. You can get those figured out. That's the key to marketing. So how do we get information? Well, a couple of ways. NCAA puts out a participation report. That's going to give you an idea of how many schools, how many people participate in a particular sport. Um, we already talked about Sport Business Research Network. We've got a 2-week subscription that started Friday, so we'll talk about it Tuesday on how you can use it. The Census Bureau, I already showed you where to get that, but there's one particularly on recreation and leisure. Sport Business Journal, Sport Marketing Quarterly, you can get those through the library. Um, so when you're trying to do studies, here's the best type of deal. It needs to be sound research. It's got to be organized, got to have a purpose to what it is. So you could look at industry segments, you could look at a particular sport, you could look at particular consumer activity, consumer demographics, and these are the type of studies that we're going to talk about each one of these in a little bit in depth. So you need to understand what they are and then kind of think about it to yourself. Um, where you've seen these used. So an irregular narrow study. This is like a one-shot study. Usually looks at consumer demographics, product consumption, attitudes. Where they ask somebody to rate what they believe about a product or a sport or somebody. So examples, this would be like at a conference tournament, you did a study about what people thought about the venue, economic impact. So, for instance, um, you could study one particular event. You could look at, what's the economic impact of Reinhardt football, of Georgia football in Athens, and get an idea. So, to yourself, kind of think about, what are some examples that you think you've seen of these type of one-shot research studies. Um, Irregular broad studies are similar, but it's on a large scale. So, national sport consumption and U.S. sport economics, these are gigantic studies that look at the overall picture of how much sport is worth in the whole U.S. So you could imagine, uh, you know, it takes a lot of people, a lot of resources, very hard to do. NCAA has done one before on wrestling change. Um, they do these sometimes to look at changes to rules. So these you probably haven't seen, but you could kind of think about how we could benefit as an athletic program here, or you as a professional. A regular narrow study is very similar but more consistent. It allows you to, because it's done on a regular basis, it allows you to look at trends. So usually it's a small scope. Um, so like for instance, you could look every year at how one particular piece of technology changes a sport, or how one particular factor changes a sport every single year. And um, the idea is that you create a database of people that you can go back to each year, so you get kind of consistent data. Um, the big thing to understand about this is it's consistent. It happens almost every year. Um, and we won't worry that much about that. A regular broad study is again consistent, but it's a big study. It's regional or national. So ESPN does a sports poll um, where they try to find out everything they can find out about sport from people. Um, Lots of topics, could be national, state, very expensive. So you see between all these, the difference between um, irregular versus regular is how consistent it is, and how narrow the focus is. Narrow being maybe only a community or one school, or broad being national, regional, state type of study. Um, so, kind of think to yourself, this would be a good question we could talk about is, what type of studies could Reinhardt be concerned with? All right, so these are some kind of areas that people can, consider for research. Um, what's the difference between a true consumer and a fan? We've talked about this already. Nobody brags about their laundry detergent. Um, what's the best way to get the information you want? Is it better to do an interview? Is it better to only pick a small group of people and really focus on like a focus group of 4, 5, 6, 10 people? Is it better to do one-on-one interviews? Um, what's the best group of people to actually deal with? Do you want to deal with um, a real small population? Do you want to deal with a big population? And then is it smart to create a database of people based on who you study? So these are things to consider. So um, be prepared Tuesday to talk a little bit about this. Remember the stuff that you got coming up, guys. It's real critical that you stay on top of what it is that you're doing.